Good afternoon, everybody. Howard Greenberg here with the man, the legend, Charlie Moon in the Dips to Rips podcast. Charlie, man, what's going on with Salesforce? I see them mooning here.
First off, it's good to see you, brother, and I'm glad to get this going again. Obviously, we've had some, just life has happened, and then of course now we're back at it and grinding along, and hopefully everything is pointing up like CRM, which is currently at $190 after earnings. They closed at 167 today.
Damn.
And it's funny because in my room people are asking how to play it, and I'm like, I'm not sure. There's a chance that CRM can make this move. It can be pretty dynamic. For one, CRM is one of those tech names that's actually tied to all three of the major markets. Their
Right.
Dow component, NASDAQ component, S&P component. And two, we've seen these big tech companies that have underperformed the broad markets look for a reason to go risk on, and CRM sure as hell provided it. They blew out earnings, guidance is good, and there were some concerns about CRM, especially with the thoughts of recession and inflation kind of weighing on corporate entities, and of course with corporations kind of pulling back. But certainly that wasn't the case. CRM is up and running, and now we have one of those risk-on effects. It really reminds me of how Meta performed and how NVIDIA performed. And this is a strong positive, Howard. The market's been choppy. You were asking, like, you didn't ask, you just said the other day, or was it today maybe? Sorry, it's been busy, but you were like,
It was yesterday. I said I couldn't find anything to trade.
yeah, you're like, what and I was with you. Maybe this will kind of give the boost to the markets. The SPY and the Qs both actually respected the 200-day simple moving average on the daily chart. Now the SPY is kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place. They're stuck finding resistance at the 50 SMA,
Right.
Support of the 200 SMA. So basically, which level is going to go? But CRM, if it holds these levels and boosts up tomorrow, Meta made a $8 run after the open on their earnings. NVIDIA made a $6 or $7 run. CRM moves up another $5. That's really enough to help kind of trigger the market to the upside here.
Right.
So,
and I didn't see it. Snowflake tomorrow, I believe.
Snowflake's out right now. They're
Okay.
down.
Okay, I was just curious because another big tech name that people don't necessarily understand how big of a player that is.
Oh yeah, and
That's
like
not a sexy name, not a sexy.
well, they're tied to one of the most important sectors for tech, which is cloud, right?
Yeah.
Part of the news guidance that they issued was that they've reaffirmed their relationship with AWS. 82% of their clients, including including clientele like Goldman Sachs, for example, are utilizing AWS. So Snowflake beat top and bottom lines. Numbers were good. Guidance looks good. I'm not sure why they're down, so we'll have to wait and see. Maybe, this is kind of that they've raised concerns about growth. We heard it from Microsoft and Amazon. It would only make sense we would hear from Snowflake. But as long as they kind of maintain and hold ground, especially above 140, 135, I like the upside here, Howard. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think Snowflake's one of the ones that really gets hidden that people don't understand how big it is because it's sort of a cross between cybersecurity and cloud. They're really the ones that provide that cybersecurity for those cloud providers and that infrastructure that's needed for it. So they sort of bridge a few different gaps. I have a different question that goes with that, though. I did see CRM had a buyback, and I've been noticing a lot of the ones announcing big buybacks are getting those jumps. Did maybe Snowflake not do that? And I don't have any knowledge. I'm asking.
I didn't see any buyback news. That doesn't surprise me. CRM has had a buyback, and they're just constantly just going to pile that out. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go up. CVX announced a tremendous buyback, and they're under the 200-day moving average.
Okay.
I really think that it's going to kind of up. As you said that, yeah, they just announced it. $2 billion buyback.
And I'm not looking at anything. I was just asking because
this is an accelerated one.
One thing that I've noticed on my tweet deck is the ones that have sort of popped on notification, not only of beating some estimates and changing, some forward-looking data, but really it seemed to me had been more about buyback.
Again, this is it looks like it's a slight downgrade in Q1 guidance. which is probably knocking the stock back. But I'm going to say this is a dip to rip because, again, this is a $2 billion stock buyback program. And when companies announce this, like Microsoft, for example, had initially started with, I think, a $5 billion, $20 billion, and now it's like a $44 billion buyback. But there's no expiry on it. So that buyback could be over the next 50 years, quite honestly. But this is different. Snowflake actually announced that this buyback program is going to expire in March of 2025. So they're going to be pretty aggressive over the next year and a half or 2 years here. And being a buyback or buying back for their investors. I also saw that their total clientele came out to 7828 and consensus was 7696. So overall, the numbers around Snowflake, even though they're down, are really, really strong. This is definitely a name that you're going to want to keep your eye on over the next few weeks here.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, Howard. So we haven't talked about crypto in a while, but man, oh man, is there some news? And listen, I want you folks to understand that Howard, for, I don't know, going on since the advent of our podcast, but respectfully, it's been talking about Binance and directly. But Howard has been on our podcast warning people about certain things within the crypto world. And he's been literally dead on, like he has a crystal ball. And he talked about this with CZ and Binance, and here we are. So Howard, can you enlighten us on this big news on Binance? Because this is big. I mean, this is huge in my opinion.
Yeah, as I've said, for the last few weeks, in my opinion, the regulatory fence is encircling Binance. CZ, who is the CEO, has tried to play himself sort of as the white knight of crypto over the last year, and starting the arguments with Sam Bankman-Fried and other things. But those of us that have been in crypto for a long time know that Binance has not always been looked at as the most reputable company, as he will try to play it off as.
Very much so.
And, and what I've always said and what he's proven here in the US already is whenever faced with a regulatory hurdle, a regulatory question, he runs from it, shuts down whatever market that is, moves away, says, my answer to your regulatory concerns, SEC, or we're going to shut down all access to the US for Binance.com. We're not going to even let institutional investors that we were allowing to use the platform, nobody. That's not the right answer. Yeah. That is, I'm avoiding the problem, the problems.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is that really caught me in the last 2 or 3 days after a not so nice article came out in Forbes pointing out the monies that have been moved around and how there is a lot of things that literally look just like FTX that are happening at Binance also. Where
inappropriate usage of funds.
Yeah, customer funds look to me maybe have been used by the company to try to make profit, to invest or to loan out to people. And, and what I have been really pissed about today and yesterday is that his responses remind me exactly of Do Kwon, exactly of Shu Zhu, exactly of Sam Bankman-Fried. You people don't understand how this works. You people aren't smart enough to understand what's going on. This is just an attack on me because I am Chinese, he actually used today.
Yeah, of course.
Is he has deflected and used all of the same sort of rhetoric that we heard from every one of the other failed centralized actors in the space. So I definitely have a lot of concerns. I hope that Gensler and everybody doesn't take the pedal off of this. I think that Binance needs to be kept in check. They are by far the largest exchange. If they're not doing it right, we have huge problems. The implications would be, again, look what FTX did to liquidity in the marketplace. If Binance was to, get shut down or we find out that there is not the monies to back stuff, they are like 8 times bigger than FTX was.
Yeah, so, and we're going to find that out soon, right? Because I think they said there's something like $6 billion of outflow in a 24-hour period since this news hit. And imagine if this
keep in mind, though, again, that they're so much bigger that $6 billion isn't a big deal to them.
Well, how is it? Billion. Hold on, but how is it if it happens for a week straight?
Oh yeah, no, it could definitely get there, but I have seen somebody, because here's where we have to be careful, is there's also been the other side of it where people are throwing crap against a wall and hoping it sticks. And, that's the bottom line on some of this is, what's at question is a big deal. They have basically, first, when the news first came out, CZ came out and said, story number one, you don't understand how exchange works. We move money around. There's cold wallets, there's hard wallets. Then Patrick Hillman, who is their chief operating officer, he came out and his answer was, well, what you see on the blockchain isn't really what matters. We have an internal ledger. Well, that is the exact opposite answer of anybody in the industry wants to hear. That is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. Do you have the same spreadsheet that SBF was using?
Yeah, exactly.
That's my question.
Yeah.
So then he came out and did that. Then Binance spokesperson came out and contradicted Hillman and said, no. Everything is done on chain. And then they even went to the why. That's why you guys don't understand how the blockchain works. No, I do understand how a blockchain works.
Right.
You moved money that was supposed to be backing these B assets. And this is why the SEC gave a Wells notice to Paxos and forced them to stop minting, the BUSD coin, is because it was no problem that Paxos was doing something wrong. This was directed directly at Binance. Binance, you are not allowed. You're making it into a security. You're taking a stable coin and then using that as a peg for other assets. You can't do that.
You're
that
right.
is called, that is the issuance of a security. So, Binance is going to see some trouble. And like I said, they were originally a mainland China exchange. And then when there was regulatory issues that hit in China, they moved to Hong Kong. When Hong Kong and China started to, sort of work in lockstep a few years ago and started to crack down, they moved or supposedly moved to Singapore. That move was disputed through the Singaporean officials who say there was never an office in Singapore. Then it was the Seychelles, I believe, that they claimed to go to. Then they went to Malta, which isn't even really a country.
Right.
And then they are now saying that they're based out of Dubai. So, so it definitely is an issue, and it just really sucks to see someone as important as CZ, who just wants to use I'm going to be the loudest guy in the room and I'm going to shout down anyone who has an inquiry.
Well, I mean, so now we have Fallout and the possibility of, a big outflow here, but there's another company that stands to gain significantly in the United States, correct? You were talking about
Coinbase,
that earlier as well.
Yeah, Coinbase is by far, Brian Armstrong was on to, and there goes you the difference. I am not normally a huge fan of Brian Armstrong. I think he's very cocky, very whiny, very opinionated. But he was on CNBC today, did a great job, explained that, that we want regulation. We need regulation, that they're at the forefront of regulation, that they are probably the most regulated exchange in the world based upon the fact that they are an SEC regulated corporation.
Well, yeah, I think he's talked about being audited already, right?
They have to do they have full disclosure through SEC disclosures. They got to do everything every other public company has to do. So they have a lot to gain from this because, in the fallout, people are going to be looking for who is the most regulated, who is the one that's there. Everybody likes to think that the whole crypto, is that, the DeFi and everything. And that is a huge part of it. But there's a huge amount of investors and a lot of money that aren't about that are there for the speculation, for, that are hedge funds and that are things. They want to be someplace where they feel that it's safe.
Well, I mean, if we want to talk about safe here, let's bring up the idea that there is obviously significant fallout from the FTX issue, right? And it really showed the SEC was caught with their pants around the ankles, that they didn't do enough back end work. They didn't follow up and check. And so that they were looking to crack the whip after the FTX fallout. That's really what really started this unraveling with Binance, and all the issues that CZ is facing. But yet we haven't heard anything negative about SEC and Coinbase, which just constantly stands out to me as a more positive. Right?
We did have a little bit. They have admitted that they've been hit with subpoenas for certain things. And when they went in to talk about their staking program, that they wanted to run the earn program, that they were told they couldn't do it. So it isn't that, but they are, like I said, they're probably, in my opinion, the most compliant and the most regulated exchange. It doesn't keep them above, the same way that Goldman Sachs has issues, right? That we've seen JP Morgan get fined. Let's not, I don't want to paint all of a sudden that Coinbase is this white hat, amazing company. We've seen from some of the biggest financial companies in the world that they don't always have our best interests at heart. But yeah, to me, Coinbase is definitely a step in the right direction. They also are really well set up because they do have Coinbase Wallet, which they can make into their custodial, answer for separation of broker dealer and custodian and such. So
I think you and I at the start of the year both talked up Coinbase in one of our episodes and how we love the upside. And I told about a story with where I was sitting around a couple of friends, and he kept asking me, my buddy Mike was like, what should I invest in? What should I invest in? I'm like, dude, tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. I love Coinbase. And, Coinbase was literally on the ground here. And I said, if it goes any low, like if you invest in it, right, at the end of the year, if it's down from your investment, I'll reimburse you whatever you're down. But if it's up, right, you're going to give me 10% because I'm telling you that was the right end. And he's like, okay, deal. So far, it looks like I'm going to get, a little bit of a paycheck here towards the end of the year. It made a lot of sense, especially with the FTX scandal. One of the things you definitely pointed out was that we're not seeing the same issues with Coinbase. We knew that there could be possible fallout, but yet week after week, days after days after that fallout, CEO Armstrong was like, look, come check us out, please. We'll show here it is.
Absolutely. And as you know, they were very reliant on fee structure. So everything was based on trading fees. And one of the things he talked about today is 48% of their profitability during Q4 came from their other ventures. There are other things that they're doing. And as you know, they just launched Base, which is a layer 2, basic scaling solution built on Ethereum that's going to, I think, be very big within that world of Citadel and BlackRock, all of these companies that have said they want to get into this space. This is probably the type of way they're going to do this. Now, we know Coinbase Prime also is the partner with BlackRock, right, for their Aladdin. Mm-hmm. So now you're talking about integrating the ability for DeFi to be built into this. So definitely, I've been impressed, in everything that I've been reading about Coinbase over the last month or so. I didn't realize they had been working on this base for these guys have been there for like 6 years. These lead engineers, they had them on a couple of shows.
So they're a lot longer than you had suspected.
Yeah, I knew they were working on some stuff, but I didn't realize they had their own developers working on this whole,
Yeah. Well, another thing too is that they're also operating on a subscription model, and if you think about it, what competition do they have from the United States? It's not much. They're going to be a very dominant, and they're already a very well-known figure within the industry. And when you talk to the general public that just doesn't have much knowledge about crypto, but they are familiar with the name Coinbase. And so it's just that brand recognition. But, we've seen companies that have pivoted to the subscription model and they're well rewarded for it. I don't think we talk about it enough with Coinbase because that subscription model is an extremely important component for the users of Coinbase, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You get a lot of benefits, whether it be the use of their debit card, you get trading fees discounted, you get access to their NFT platforms, you get access to a bunch of different things, and it's a fixed amount of trading fees. So if you're a high frequency trader, or trading in high volumes, wouldn't you want to cap your fees if you knew it was $20 a month? It's totally revolutionizing. I believe Robinhood's got something similar now that they sort of copied, that they're doing the same type of thing.
Yeah, they've had that kind of model. And this is the thing. I wonder how many of our listeners remember when you actually had to pay for stock trades. This is Robinhood changed.
This was like $15 a trade.
No, easily. So with the way that exchanges started to kind of temper it down to fight off the competition is that they would make it a little bit cheaper, or they would just make it a one flat fee on each side. But when I first started trading, Howard, I was having to pay $7 per 100 shares that I was going to utilize. And I would take on pretty substantial sized positions with my old firm. So if you think about how much we actually had to pay just for a round turn, meaning an open and close of a trade,
right.
And again, that was relatively cheap in comparison to what people had to pay 10 years prior to that.
You also used to have to call a stockbroker to make
yeah,
your
I was
trade.
just gonna say, when you actually when you had to pick up your rotary phone and call your broker to execute a trade, they were charging like 50, 100, 250 off the top.
Yeah,
I mean, so
that's
imagine
not that long ago. It really
listen, and it's funny because I was doing a content video for YouTube earlier, and I talked about how electronic trading right now and the expansion and frequency of it is really kind of in the infancy stage, if you think about it, relative to the history of the market. And where, obviously the crypto market has always been electronic, but the whole derivative of like how good traders have it now versus how it used to be, it's
just
totally
the
different.
Information, just the access to information that you didn't used to have. I mean, you used to. Yeah, I can remember my dad opening up the business section to look at the Wall Street, to see what just happened on the New York Stock Exchange. Reading down, okay, Apple was up yesterday. IBM was up or down. I mean, I remember that.
When was the last time you picked up a real newspaper? It's been like 6 years for me, at least.
Oh, it's been, I can't even. I mean, an actual newspaper, maybe a USA Today at some point to read a sports section somewhere, like at a hotel.
The last newspaper.
I would say that I would guarantee you the last time that I read a newspaper was because it was put at the door of my hotel room.
Yeah. The last time I actually bought a newspaper, it was when my beloved Cubs won the World Series. I needed to have it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely did it for the Red Sox.
Yeah. Well, that I mean, again, both were a little too long ago, unfortunately, for both of us. But
and neither one looked like we're going back anytime soon.
hey, speak for yourself, man.
You keep dreaming.
Let's talk about this here. What do you think is now going to be the follow-up fallout with CZ and Binance? Like, honestly, I know this is a tough question here, but this is going to have a possibility of a Rolling Stone effect here, like widespread.
I think that they're going to very quickly realize that they have to get into a regulatory compliant mode, that they're going to have to change their tune. Now, keep in mind, I do want to make very clear, Binance.us basically only licenses the name Binance from Binance. It's a company, it's a different company called BAM Trading. And it is affiliated with Binance, but not the Binance we're talking about right now.
Right.
So I think what you're going to see, because here's what I think you're going to see. I do think you're going to see much more coordinated regulation and partnerships across the EU, Asia, and the US when it comes to crypto regulations and enforcement of, fraud and manipulation and all that type of stuff. We're already seeing calls for it. Brian Armstrong brought it up today. Also, the European Union just passed a very comprehensive crypto bill called MiCA, the markets in, I don't even know what the CA stands for, markets in crypto assets.
Yeah.
And, it's very extensive, and it doesn't necessarily have everything in the way that the crypto industry wants it to. But as he said, now we can go forward. We know what we need to do because we've seen Gary Gensler, not only a CZ on my hit list this week, but so is Mr. Gensler, because again, he just keeps lying to the American consumer. He keeps telling us it's easy. All a crypto exchange has to do is go onto the website to sign up for an exchange. I will gladly buy anybody the nicest steak dinner that you've ever had at Capitol Grill here in DC if you could go onto the website and show me where they would sign up to register as a crypto exchange.
Anybody hungry?
I'll put that out to all of our listeners.
Anybody hungry?
Because it's not there. It's not true. Even as Commissioner Hester Pierce has made it very clear that that's not accurate in any way, shape, or form. There is no clarity to it. And if you try to, you're not able to, because they'll say this doesn't apply. What you're handing us doesn't work. We just saw it with the banking industry. They basically told Custodia, who did everything they asked, jumped through every hole, and said, I'm sorry, we're still not going to approve you. Make no mistake, our executive branch has a very concerted effort to put the clamps on crypto because they were the largest benefactor of Mr. Sam Bankman-Fried. Biden's second largest contributor was Sam Bankman-Fried. So as an overreaction to that, they're trying to distance themselves as much as possible and come down as hard as possible on crypto as they can.
So I keep turning because I'm looking and waiting on Tesla, and I just saw that it finally started moving. For those that don't know, it's a big day for Tesla shareholders. Apparently, it's Investor Day. Now, there's rumors of a new master plan or a third leg to the master plan. There's rumors of a affordable EV. A lot of chatter about the Model 3 or a version of the Model 3 that would start under 30,000. You know, if they opened up to like having a starter price at like 25,000, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to buy that car at 25,000. I mean, when it's all said and done, it's usually like 10 to 15,000 in add-ons. I mean, honestly,
absolutely.
But like it opens up a door to people that have wanted a Tesla, but were never able to really consider it because of the pricing range it was at. I'm not it's not like I don't have the money or I'm cheap, but I didn't really want to spend a ton for a vehicle. And I wanted something that was going, I used to be a big car guy, and I hate to say it like this, but like at this point, I just need something that's going to get me from point A to point B, not cost me a lot, and it was good on gas, obviously EV, and was going to be just something that could, in all honesty, carry more than one golf bag. And I hate to say it like that, but that really was one of my considerations. So I was down to a Model 3, a Kia Stinger, GT, and a Honda Accord. And of all the cars that I picked, I ended up going with the Honda Accord. The other day I saw a Stinger and I kind of regretted it. But when I looked at the Model 3, like I had a deal for the Kia Stinger to get 8,000 off. So I was going to get it pretty cheap. The Honda Accord I was looking at was probably going to be MSRP around 35. But the reason why I went with the Honda Accord is because I caught the sales guy towards the end of the month, which is always the best time to go buy a car. And I basically just kind of cheaped him down for 4 hours and ended up getting it out the door for 28,000 total with tax. So, and it had like 12 miles on it, and it pretty much had everything I wanted except for one feature. And honestly, if it didn't turn out to be that route, I would either be in a Model 3 or a Kia Stinger if that guy didn't offer me that deal. So I was just like, which one do I take? Now, if the Model 3 was priced in at 25 and I had the option between the other two, almost without a shadow of doubt, I would have went with the Model 3. And it's not because I'm a Tesla fanboy. I do like it. It's very affordable. I like the idea of EV. I don't drive a lot, you know, and you know, it's like something that would be perfect as an everyday driver, in my opinion. And that's what I'm really interested to see what he has to say, because there's fallout from this, Howard. If he doesn't talk about a cheaper model and he doesn't talk about a great master plan, and all this was just Tesla spending millions of dollars on this light show. They always have great shows. You know, Tesla's gonna be down at 180 tomorrow, brother.
Yeah, I mean, and it's going to take everything with it. So
I mean, look,
it doesn't matter what CRM just did. You know, if Tesla goes wrong, it goes wrong. It's so funny because it's the same way we've been talking in the room. You know, Bitcoin and the way the crypto has been trading all week and for the last 2 weeks, it's all in lockstep. So there's a few things that are moving out of it, but not really.
Yeah.
You know, when Bitcoin's been moving up to 24, everything's been moving up. When Bitcoin hits 24, it's been going back down to 23. Everything drops back down. The difference is the alts have been sliding further down than they've been recovering on the way up.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that they're trending more lower than higher here? Because Bitcoin has been pretty damn good, man.
I think it's a flight to quality. I think you're seeing people that are moving out of the alts and into Bitcoin.
I mean, that makes sense, right? When Bitcoin is really strong overall,
it tends to sap some of the juice out of everything else. Quite honestly, so I do think that's part of it. That's why I think it is. I think that we've seen that because we're seeing the spot buying on Bitcoin continue. We're seeing that it's the sell pressure is coming, quite honestly, from the derivative liquidations. On the futures on the perps are really what moves the needle.
And I mean, isn't that usually how it's the case? It's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then everything else, and they'll call it alt season.
Yeah, that's in the bull markets for sure. We
Yeah,
usually
yeah,
see
yeah.
Bitcoin moves first. Ethereum can, they will matter. Like if Ethereum has an upgrade, like what we've got going on right now, going into Shanghai, sometimes that will do it. I think that that's not going to play out much more. Too much talk that people are going to sell off after Shanghai after they can unstake. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you'll see a little bit of sell off, but as I want to point out is that I do think what you're going to see is just as many people that are ready to pull money out that have had it staked for a year and a half, 18 months are
Yeah,
people like our boy Steve at money.net
yeah.
who didn't stake because he didn't want his Ethereum held for 18 months without being able to touch it in case he wanted to. And
Right.
now, has a nice bag of it and now will stake it because he can take it out at any given time. So I think you'll find just as many new stakers that sort of replace it. Keep in mind that the percentage of Ethereum that is staked out of its total circulating supply is one of the lowest for proof of stake blockchains. So,
Jeez. Okay. Howard, I'm just curious.
yep.
Final thoughts, man. What do you think Bitcoin's headed towards in the next few days?
Next few days, I think we probably still have a little bit of downside in front of us. It's a little quiet week, as you know, across economic data. We don't really get much till next week, right? So I think we'll see just a little bit of a slide. It'll be interesting because last night we really saw some nice movement during the Asian hours as the China reopening sort of has that working in its favor. But we have the key things I would say is that I'm watching is resistance at 25 250. That is the huge resistance spot. If you're going to go to the next level, you got to get above that and hold above that. And on the downside is right now 22 650. So those are sort of our areas. Right now we're sitting at about 23 500. So sort of in the middle of that, and I think we're range bound for a little bit, and that's where I think we're at.
Um, Really quick, Howard. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up news. Something's going on
Yeah.
with SI. I don't know what's going on with SI. There's a 10K filing that came out that I don't see right now. I'm trying to find it for everybody. The 10K filing. Oh, SBNY. Kraken is pulling back from using crypto. What? No, that was earlier. I don't know what I'm seeing here. I don't see any news around SI. There's a 10K file. Oh, there it is.
On Silvergate,
They're
Kraken
delaying.
and Silvergate are cutting ties together, and Silvergate's delaying their quarterly report.
Yeah. I see it now.
Same thing that Mara did a few days ago.
Yeah, they're crushing Silvergate. Didn't BlackRock just buy a big chunk of them?
They did.
Oh my gosh. CRM's at 194.
Jeez.
It's
Wow.
remember it closed at 167, guys and gals. Well, you were talking about with the markets, with Bitcoin and where it can bounce back and forth from. That's kind of what I see with the SPY here, Howard. We're talking about how it's kind of pegged in between the 50 and the 200-day moving average. So we either break down below 393 or we break above 396 and 3/4, because until one level gives, it's just really stuck.
Yeah.
Now, this is the beginning of the month. We expected a little bit more activity. It wouldn't surprise me to see a little risk off here going into the next Fed meeting. The FOMC or the markets are pricing in 3 rate hikes now going forward, all 25 basis points. We were only pricing in 1, possibly 2 more. Now we're pricing in the probability of 3. And this is interesting because you know as well as a lot of others, but some don't, that Fed actions will affect both of our markets, your market and mine.
Yeah,
which is
and remember, I've been saying I didn't trust that transitory Goldilocks. If you remember, I've been
yeah.
sort of calling that out that we have downside till July that people just for some reason seem to have forgotten about, and that's why I kept on saying it on crypto. Is there is still a headwind. We that recession word is going to come out really big. I mean, one of them. Who was the one today? Was it Kashkari that came out and said, "Hey,
Kashkari.
a recession is not my problem. Inflation is."
He's like, yeah,
Don't cry,
he's like,
Charlie.
if
Don't
recession
cry.
is he's like, if recession is a byproduct of us keeping inflation down, then so be it.
Yeah.
It's like in Rocky, like if he dies, he dies. It's in all
That is
honesty, that was the
actually the
attitude.
perfect. That really was what I felt like it was. I mean, I'm like, can you wait till at least 10 a.m. before you give us a kick in the you know what? I mean, it just
The funny thing and this is what wasn't talked about, was that he actually basically threw the entire FOMC under the bus by saying, I no longer think that 2% inflation target is really going to be achievable. That's basically what he is hinting at. And the
yeah.
market's
Oh
like,
yeah. I mean,
okay.
you don't get much more hawkish than that man was today. He could have had a beak and been carrying around a salmon in his mouth.
This guy used to be a pretty hardcore dove, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He definitely has switched that over, hasn't he?
Must have looked at his
I
portfolio last year at the wrong time.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting too. People aren't really listening to the fact that Brainerd's gone, and she was one of those voices of reason, right?
Yeah.
Supposedly on there. So
Well,
now
she
I mean
was
Biden
vice.
gets Biden gets to pick the person, so I'm sure they'll be just as dovish as she was.
Well, there was a gentleman named Jefferson, last name Jefferson, who was the pick, and he was an economist out of, I forgot what college, well known in the industry, and I remember I said last week, I was like, who the hell is Jefferson? This dude came out firing, and then of course he was on his like circuit, like he spoke 3 times in 4 days. Who the voice of reason was today was Fed Bostage.
And that's
He
not
was the one
that.
that was talking about 5.25,
Yeah.
and now everybody's talking about 5.5%. It's like, what just happened? This is the problem right now in the stock market, is that once we are like, oh, okay, now we got an idea of what the Fed does, they take a steaming pile of what pie and throw it in your face and be like, just kidding. It's going to
Yeah.
be worse.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I mean,
they have
it's
stair stepped up from 4.5 to 5.5% now. So once we get to 5.5%, then what? Oh, well, let's talk about 6%. It's as if like they're trying to make sure the markets don't panic enough to utterly collapse with an absolute ulterior motive of continuing what they're doing. And all it's doing right now is wreaking havoc on the market. Sentiment is switching on a dime, even intraday. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with volatility, but it does suck when you're caught on the wrong side. And it's not because you were trading bad, but because there was a tweet that came out
right.
and you just can't foresee that. And you're like, why my stops getting hit? Well, now you know. We'll see if they continue this circus show here going forward. There's still 2 more Fed talkers. Tesla's starting to get a little softer, but this is turning into a nothing burger, which was, someone asked me today, is this going to be a nothing burger? And I'm like, I extremely doubt it. And well, I don't look right
That's
in this.
surprise. I'm with you because that's surprising. I wouldn't have thought so because I don't think anything with Tesla's ever been a nothing burger. We've seen it with Apple a couple of times. Not often either, but we're at a couple of those investor days. Everyone gets all excited. It moves a couple of points here or there, and within the first 5 seconds, and then just retraces right back to where it was. But
Yeah,
Tesla has
so
never done that.
um they're talking about deliveries a bit, which is pretty good. They're actually talking about going after Toyota, which is, I think, the top selling automaker in the world. We're talking about the possibility that we may see a lower price vehicle in the future. I haven't seen anything about that. They were supposed to talk about FSD, like fully autonomy. They were talking about what else is they supposed to talk about? A new vehicle, energy. Oh, they're also talking about expansion of their charging stations and opening it up for everybody and having that as a source of revenue as well, or increase of source of revenue. But and they were also supposed to talk a little bit more about the humanoid or the cyborg or I don't know what you want to call it, and the household helper. I just, when I saw their cyborg, it really looked like iRobot with Will Smith when he had to check on his mom or grandma.
We don't need those.
Yeah, well, he's trying to bring it to everybody's doorstep. So I don't know. It seems like it really looks like right now that they're not saying much. And there was a little blurb that Tesla is looking to cut next generation vehicle assembly costs by 50 cents or 50%, which would be huge. But it looks like they're not liking the news because Tesla's going down after hours. They just got under $200. So we'll see how this plays out, Howard. I don't know. Let me start with my final thoughts and you could go to yours. My final thoughts on the stock market: expect more madness. If you are swing trading, it's got to be more shorter term. Even day trading is a bit shorter term. Things are going to remain volatile until the next FOMC meeting. Depending on if they clarify what their actions are going forward, or if they leave the market up to kind of guessing, that's going to help determine the health of the market and direction of the market. If they're offering clarity, we're going to go way up. And if they're leaving it up to smoke and mirrors as we'll play it by ear type of mode, this market's still going to be kind of working lower, more back and forth, really unsure, and more gravitating towards news and being affected by news as opposed to trading with clarity. Howard, how about you, man?
I agree with that about the news is definitely dominating the way we move one way or the other. The other thing that I would add is, again, as I said, make sure you're keeping an eye on Bitcoin if you're making any trades on alts, because if it's at the top of its range and it's petering out, it's going to take everything down with it or up with it, whichever way it goes. So make sure you are paying attention to Bitcoin, respect BTC.
CZ ends up on the run?
I don't know if he needs to go on the run, but I think that you're going to see Binance lose market share tremendously over the next year.
Oh, yeah. Expect that outflow, guys and gals. Be careful. Howard's talked about using ledgers. If you listen to the man, he may know what he's talking about. He's only warned you and predicted some of these downfalls here. Yeah, you heard it first.
Everybody, have a fantastic week. For Charlie, the disciple of Trend Moon, and myself, Crypto Hondo, thank you for joining us. Make sure you hit that like button. Please share it with your friends and even people you don't like, because we could use that. It helps us get this message across to more people. Let them know what's going on. We're here to help the retail trader. And we'll see you guys all next week. If there's anything else you want us to cover, make sure you put it into the description, into the notes.
Peace and love, everybody.
Yeah.
This has been Dips to Rips with Howard Greenberg and Charlie Moon, brought to you by Prosper Trading Academy. Visit us at prospertrading.com to find out more. This podcast should not be considered professional, financial, and/or investment advice. By accessing this podcast, you acknowledge that Prosper Trading Academy LLC, PTA, makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information and opinions presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. PTA does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such such approval or endorsement. The third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of the PTA. PTA assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or the third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein. Moreover, PTA makes no warranty that this podcast or server that it makes it available is free of viruses, worms, or other elements of codes that manifest contaminating or destructive properties. PTA expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, reliance on, or inability to use this podcast or the information presented in this podcast.